In the previous episode, we've covered insecurities, or hopefully uncovered them, and now we're free to tackle emotional intelligence, which is a big chunk of cheese to bite from. While the IQ was the tip of the iceberg, EQ is the rest of the iceberg, the biggest chunk being underwater. The biggest chunk of the universe is made of protons, neutrons, and lots of morons. Your input, my dear conservative voice, is like the Titanic of the seas every time. The boat, not the movie. All right, dear mice and sailors, in search of a dream job or a partner, we obviously want to find a company or a person, if we're looking for a dream soulmate, who has a high emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Well, let me illustrate the classic definition of it, which can be broken down into 4 bits. The I, so self-awareness and self-regulation, and the we, social awareness and relationship management. So how do we see ourselves and what do we do about it? How do we regulate ourselves? And then how do we see others? And what do we do about regulating relationships? I want to squeeze in the 3 pillars of the Agile philosophy into this model. Bear with me, I think it will be fun. So the Agile philosophy is based on 3 pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So when we are transparent, open with ourselves, self-aware, then we can inspect our failures, mistakes, gaps, insecurities, and so on. And then we can adapt. We can change our behavior, change our thoughts, our inner narrative, and so on and so forth on a personal level, right? The same can be done as a team in a social environment. Usually it's the most prominent social environment we're part of is our workplace. The same recipe applies. Be open, inspect, and adapt. Rinse and repeat. It's that easy. Or maybe it's not. So the key ingredient here that I want to zoom on is openness. So when we are open, when in the right time, place, and circumstances, we are able to be open, inspect, and adapt. So open our thoughts and then inspect through words and then ultimately adapt through actions. Well, that's a win-win situation for everyone. However, all of us, to some extent, have some discrepancies between thought, word, and actions. There are some gaps there. When there is a very big discrepancy between thought, word, and action in a company, or in other words, policies, regulations are interpreted to the moon and back in meetings, there is no agreement found, and then actual implementation of these policies is a stretch of imagination, well, then obviously, in my opinion, that's a low EQ company. Do you agree? Do you smell a rat here? The poor alignment between thoughts, words, and actions in one person is a bad match with another person who is open and sincere, whether in the workplace or in a close partnership, close relationship. If you're tight as a vault and you suppress or hide most of your thoughts, feelings, we are most likely a very bad match from an emotional standpoint, whether you are a company or a mouse. And let me illustrate this with some recent examples of my own experience in the workplace. A mouse is prone to shoot themselves in the foot every now and again when they are not open, or when they are in an environment where openness is not appreciated. And I was in such an environment in a recent workplace setting. So the company I was working for was in leadership made up of clusters of different families. Not just one family, it wasn't a family-owned company. It was multiple families, husbands and wives, or brothers and sisters and cousins being in key leadership positions. And it was extremely difficult to address low performance risks in such a situation. Because obviously a lot of the family interests would have conflicts with the company interests. If you want to promote a person who needs to be promoted, but another family from another cluster of leadership disagrees, well, you can't do that. And likewise, if there is somebody in leadership who is a low performer or who is breaking the code of ethics, again, it's very hard to do because there will be their spouse or their brother or sister militating against that. So you can't really do much about it. Too much inbreeding is not helpful in nature or in companies, in my opinion. There are just too many acrobatics involved, either to promote someone who is not part of those family clusters or to signal low performance among those same family clusters. It feels like playing cat and mouse. This family company culture might ignore real family obligations, or on the other side of the spectrum, create these unhealthy dynamics. So secrets, they are no help in a relationship, and the opposite of openness. Be it in choosing a life partner or professional relationships in a company, when we are like closed doors, when we don't operate with at least a measure of transparency and sincerity, it's very difficult to establish an open relationship and ultimately to be able to inspect and adapt, because there is nothing to inspect and adapt if we are closed as walls. Well, in a setup which is completely closed off without any openness, all we ever meet with are masks upon masks, without ever getting to the core of a person's mind and heart. And where's the fun in that? Because we all want to grow and evolve and discover life's meaning, discover ourselves through the lens of others, and discover others through our own lenses. How do we get to do that if people around us are closed doors? There's no way we can do it. It's boring, and a job like that, where relationships are just masks upon masks that we have to deal with, well, they are not fun, and ultimately people burn out because they don't get to be themselves and they don't want to stay in a job like this. A job is not what you do, dear mice, but who you get to be while doing it. If you get to be at your most creative, at your most enthusiastic self, if you get to grow, if you get to dig into life's meaning while being in the workplace, well, then it's a lot of fun, and you're likely to stick to that workplace. Likewise, in a marriage, it's not what you do, it's not those repetitive tasks like driving home or buying gifts for the holidays, but who you get to be while being part of this relationship. Whether you get to be open and explore your own self and explore the other person in a trustworthy, respectful, intimate environment, or you're just exploring somebody's mask. Openness is risky. Can't say that I'm a big fan of being open myself. We can be open doors, but only with people who are emotionally mature, who will appreciate rather than judge and smile in contempt at the diversity or the originality of our thoughts and feelings. And now I would like to focus on another ingredient that's very important in our emotional intelligence, and that's very important in the Agile philosophy. Specifically, the Scrum methodology puts a big emphasis on this value, which is courage. Courage is needed in a relationship. Obviously, in order to be able to be open, we need courage, because we might be judged, though.
Courage is overestimated.
In order to inspect, again, we need courage to pick out that flaw and dig into our insecurities and see what we can work with. And again, we need courage to adapt, to change our behavior or our inner narrative at the level of words, or even higher up at the level of our thoughts. If you, my dear mouse, are so brave and courageous that you routinely break the scales of bravery, it is worth considering, instead of enrolling in an employee setup, to become an owner, launch a startup, a YouTube channel, whatnot. And now let me practice my own preaching of bravery and tell you a story about courage, or rather the lack of it. While I was living in San Francisco in the Bay Area, I was often going to dinners with friends, and there were lots of unknown faces. After one such dinner, the day after, my friend called me and said, "Oh, you have an admirer. There's this 6 foot tall, blue eyes guy from the financial district who is interested in you. But he told me that he wants your phone number only if you like him." So basically, my friend was on a mission, without knowing him at all, to find out first whether I like him enough. And then, if I did, then he would ask for my phone number. And my friend, smart that she was, with a pretty solid emotional intelligence chunk in that iceberg, said, "No, I'm not going to share, and I'm not going to ask." And I backed her on that. I was appreciative of what she did, despite the beautiful physical appearance and the cool job he had and the interesting person he was. I sort of remember very vaguely talking to him, but I do remember that we had an interesting conversation going on. His ego was so fragile that he could not face even the smallest of rejection. And honestly, I think it was a bit of a storm in a cup. There are way bigger rejections in life than getting a no from a stranger, no matter how much you like that girl or guy. And there are way bigger moments of elation than getting a yes from a stranger, for that matter. So did I just wriggle out of telling my own personal story about bravery and walked all over somebody else's fragile self-confidence? Oh my God, I think that's exactly what I did. Okay, let me tell you my own story of bravery, which does not end well. A couple of years before being in San Francisco, I was in France, and I was part of a very active social group. There was a young man there who was very interesting, high IQ, exciting, great sense of humor. We talked quite a bit, and I realized that there is a lot more potential there. We already knew each other for about a year at that point, so I asked him whether he would be open to explore a relationship with me, and he said, "No, I'm in a relationship." Ouch. That was painful.
It's a known fact that you are a fool, my dear optimist.
But we acted like two adults, even though I was in my early 20s. And we continued to see each other in those social gatherings and continued to interact normally as friends. But I felt the sting of rejection sometimes, but I was brave enough to acknowledge that that's it and that's how life is, and let's move on. Okay, so let's end here. I think enough with the confidences and vulnerability, opening doors and memories from the past. I want to end here on this note. Openness and bravery are important in relationships. That emotional courage that we have helps us explore ourselves and others and find meaning in our lives, both in an intimate setting with a life partner and in the workplace. And it makes it fun and exciting to live